At-takathur means to gain and want more and more and more. Khusr literally means to lose your most essential assets. You know, it's one thing you invest your money in a business and you were hoping to make 20%, but you only made 10%. That's a loss, but you still made something. You didn't lose your initial investment. But when you put money in a business and you lose the money you put in and don't make anything on top of that either, you lose your capital investment basically. Ra'sul mal, what's called in Arabic, Ra'sul mal. You lose that too. Then that is called khusr. In other words, the previous surah was talking about people trying to get more and more and more, and then Allah says, no, the reality is you are in loss. No matter how much you think you've gained, the reality is that you are situated in a position of loss, subhanAllah. There Allah said the human being is created in the best possible form. Here He said, roughly translated, every human being is in a state of loss. If he's created in the best possible form, then why would he be in a state of loss, right? You know, if you're created to meet success, then it's a tragedy that you're even qualified to be successful, and yet still you ended up being a loser. You still ended up losing. So Allah Azza wa Jal did not tell us that the human being is in loss first. He told us the human being is qualified to be successful first. And it's his own failure that leads him to become of those who have lost. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. This comes later on. But that declaration is early. Human being, what deluded you? What kept you away from your gracious master? What was such a big distraction that deceived you? In other words, that you remember أَلْهَاكُمُ التَّكَاثُرُ? Allah is actually directly complaining to the human being in that surah, saying, what deluded you? What was it that took you away from your gracious master? Then Allah said, يَا أَيُّهَا الْإِنسَانِ إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ كَدْحًا فَمُلَاقِهِ. You forgetful human being, you are chugging away towards your Lord. Like it or not, you are headed towards your Lord, effort after effort after effort, and you're eventually going to meet Him. There's no avoiding it. You can be distracted all you want, you're still headed in that direction. Then He told the human being, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We created the human being in enormous toil, meaning the life of the human being is full of labor. Whether you want to live like a believer or live like a kafir, doesn't matter, you're still going to have to work. You're still going to have problems. You're still going to deal with stuff in life. So your life is created in struggle. Why not make it a struggle that will benefit you here and the next life? Instead of just struggling, so it benefits you here and has no benefit for you in the next life. And why should you have concern for the next life? Allah Azza wa Jalla said, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. He went further a few surahs later. We created the human being in the best possible form. He was designed to achieve high things. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to achieve those high things because what do we find in this surah? إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Despite that high noble status he was given, most human beings were not able to live up to that nobility being. No doubt the human being is openly and clearly extremely ungrateful and in extreme denial in regards to his master. The human being is created weak, pathetic, frail. Something's happened to him, he gets overwhelmed, overjoyed. Something bad happens to him, he loses all hope. Allah says, كَلَّا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى. No doubt it is the human being that truly rebels. It is the human being that rebels. And the language suggests, don't blame it on anyone else. Don't say society made me rebel, shaitan made me rebel. Nobody else. Human being himself, he rebels. Then he says, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لِرَبِّهِ لَكَنُودٍ. Know that the human being, in regards to his master especially, is very disloyal. All these commentaries about the human being, he's ungrateful, he's created weak, he rebels, he's disloyal to his master. This is all commentary. But what's the conclusion? The conclusion is here. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. It's not an adjective of the human being. It's not a description of his behavior. It's now the consequence. What is the net result of all of these, misbehaviors? The net result is he is immersed in a state of loss. Whenever you use the word illa, except, you are talking about what we call in English an exception. What is in majority? What is more in number? The rule or the exception? The rule is in more number and the exception is very few. You say everybody came except that one. When you use except, you're talking about one or two or a few that didn't come, everybody else is here. Now in this surah, what is the rule? What is the majority situation? وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. That's the rule. Human beings are immersed in loss, in doom. What's the exception? إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. By presenting the exception as those who believe and do good deeds, etc., that we're going to study, by presenting them in the form of an exception, what we're learning here is this is not going to be a lot of people. This is going to be few. The vast majority of human beings will be in loss. That's the rule. And the exceptions will be a few. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us from the exceptions. This is those words. But in this surah, there's no mention of reward. The only mention is human beings are in loss except these people. But he doesn't say, and these people will get Jannah, and these people will get everlasting life, all of it, nothing. No mention of what they will get. The only thing that's mentioned is, these people are failures, and these people escaped. These people escaped. You know what this is? We call this, in simple English, we call this passing grades. Somebody gets an 85, somebody gets a 95, somebody gets 100, somebody gets an A, a B, or a C. But you know the guy who barely survived and didn't get the F? You know, there's the F, right? Let's say, I don't know, in New York it's 65. Is that the failing grade here in Texas? I don't know. But 65 is your passing grade, basically. You get a 64, you failed. You get a 64, you failed. Now whether you get a 34, a 30, a 0, a 25, all of them get what grade? F. That's all an F. The only thing that will survive is 65 or above. You understand? Like passing grade or above. This surah is not talking about higher levels of success. Other surahs talk about success. They deal with what jannat, what gardens, what treasures. That's the subject matter of other surahs. This surah, the subject of it is, who is not a failure. Now I put it in those terms because I want you to understand. This surah describes the bare minimum, the bottom line. Who is above the failing grade? Because anybody who didn't meet this minimum requirement is obviously what? A failure. They're a failure. So this surah is not about earning Jannah, this surah is more about escaping hellfire. This surah is not about success, it's more about survival. Which leads me to this very, very critical discussion that we need to have today. What is the difference between talking about success and talking about survival? My contention is this surah is not talking about success, what's it talking about? Survival. What's the difference between the two? You see, survival is something, when your survival is being questioned, you forget everything else. When you're drowning, when you're in a building with fire in it, right? When there's a danger headed your way, when your survival is in question, you forget everything. And when your survival is in question, there's no time for you to talk about your what? Success. There's no need to talk about success. I mean, if you're working in an office and you're talking to your boss about getting a promotion, what are you talking about? Success. But the building went on fire, and you say, let me finish talking about my promotion first. I haven't just finished negotiating with. Does that make any sense? No. Because you can't talk about success unless you've already secured your own survival. You understand? So before we talk about higher levels of paradise and higher success, what do we have to ensure we're okay with? At least we're surviving, we're not in the failing grade. That's the urgency of this surah. The bare minimum. The survival. I keep saying there are 4 conditions. One of the benefits of knowing that there are 4 conditions is that this surah proves that being good on your own is not enough. Being good for yourself is not enough. Our deen is not just a concern with ourselves, it's also a concern with other people. And you're not doing it for other people, for them, you're actually doing it for yourself. And this surah is the proof. Why? Because Allah said, you are in loss unless you do, yes, iman and amilu salihat. That's for who? That's what I do. But tawasi bil haqq, getting the truth to other people. Telling each other to be perseverant and remain committed. Is that about you or other people now? That's others. And you know, tafa'ul in Arabic, from which tawasi comes, it has ishtirak in it, people working together. So it proves, it actually necessitates the concern for others in this quest for our own salvation.